They say he was the wisest man who ever lived, but his warnings are the ones people ignore the most. 3,000 years ago, a king ruled over Israel at the height of its power. He had wealth beyond measure, 700 wives, 300 concubines, gold pouring in from every nation. He could have anything he wanted, and he got it all. But King Solomon wrote something that would outlive his empire. Short, sharp sayings that cut straight to the truth about how life actually works. He called them proverbs, and they're still true today because human nature hasn't changed at all. Here's what's interesting about Solomon. He didn't write long philosophical texts. He wrote short observations that pack an entire lesson into a single sentence. Why? Because he understood something important. People don't remember lectures. They remember lines that hit hard and stick in your mind. And Solomon had a gift for seeing through situations. He ruled over disputes. He watched people make choices. He saw patterns that repeated over and over. The same mistakes, the same consequences, the same types of people getting the same results. And he wrote it all down in a way that's impossible to forget. But here's the problem. We've heard these proverbs so many times, they've lost their impact. They sound like grandma wisdom or church quotes. But when Solomon wrote them, they were sharp observations about reality, about how things actually work, about the patterns you ignore at your own risk. Let me show you what I mean. One of Solomon's most famous proverbs says, "Pride comes before destruction, and a stubborn spirit before a fall." You've probably heard that. Might even have it on a coffee mug somewhere. But do you actually live like it's true? Because Solomon wasn't being poetic. He was stating a fact he'd seen play out hundreds of times. Prideful people fall, always, without exception. Not as punishment from above, just as natural consequence. Pride makes you blind, makes you overconfident, makes you ignore warnings. And that ignorance destroys you. He watched it happen to rulers who thought they were untouchable, to rich merchants who thought they were too smart to fail, to warriors who thought they were invincible. Pride made them all stupid. And stupid decisions led to their destruction. Every single time. So when he says pride comes before a fall, he's not giving moral advice. He's giving you a survival pattern. Watch for pride in yourself. The moment you start thinking you're above failure, you're setting yourself up for it. Another one. A gentle answer turns away anger, but a harsh word stirs up wrath. Simple, right? But watch how people actually behave. Someone attacks them verbally, and they immediately attack back. Harsh for harsh, anger for anger, and the situation explodes. Solomon watched this pattern constantly. He saw that the person who stays calm and responds gently has all the power. They de-escalate, they disarm, they win without fighting. But the person who matches anger with anger just creates more anger, and everyone loses. This isn't about being nice, it's about being smart. If you want to actually solve conflicts instead of just venting, you need to understand this pattern. Harshness creates harshness. Gentleness creates space for resolution. Here's another one that hits different when you actually think about it. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools suffers harm. Solomon understood something we pretend not to know. You become like the people you spend time with. Not a little bit, a lot. Your friends shape your thinking, your habits, your standards, your future. If you hang around people who make bad decisions, you'll start making bad decisions. If you hang around people who complain constantly, you'll become a complainer. If you hang around people with no ambition, your ambition will die. This isn't judgment, it's pattern recognition. Solomon saw it over and over. Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. Because you absorb the people around you, whether you mean to or not. So if your life isn't going the way you want, look at who you're walking with. Are they wise? Are they going somewhere? Or are they dragging you down while convincing you it's everyone else's fault? Here's a brutal one. The one who loves pleasure will become poor. Anyone who loves wine and luxury will never be rich. Solomon watched wealthy people destroy themselves. Not through bad business decisions. Through pleasure, through loving comfort more than discipline. They'd make money and immediately spend it on things that felt good. Parties, luxury, status symbols, always chasing the next pleasure. And slowly, their wealth would drain away. Because pleasure is expensive and addictive. The more you have, the more you need. Solomon wasn't against enjoying life. He had more luxury than almost anyone in history. But he noticed that people who made pleasure their priority always ended up poor. Not just financially, poor in character, poor in discipline, poor in everything that actually matters. If you're always chasing what feels good, you'll never build anything that lasts. Because building requires discomfort, requires saying no to pleasure, requires delayed gratification. And if you can't do that, you'll always be broke. In every sense of the word. Let's talk about another one. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. Solomon understood something about decision-making. That your perspective is limited. You can't see your own blind spots. You need other people's input. But most people don't want counsel. They want validation. They've already decided what they want to do, and they're just looking for people to agree with them. That's not counsel. That's ego. Real counsel means asking people who know better than you, who have experience you don't have, who can see things you're missing. And then actually listening to them, even when they tell you things you don't want to hear. Solomon had advisors. The wisest king who ever lived still asked for input. Because he understood that wisdom isn't about knowing everything yourself. It's about being smart enough to learn from others. Here's one that explains most failed relationships. Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper displays folly. Solomon watched people destroy their relationships with quick tempers, saying things in anger they couldn't take back, making decisions while heated that they regretted forever. The pattern was clear. People who couldn't control their temper couldn't control their life. Their anger controlled them, and it cost them everything. Jobs, relationships, respect, opportunities, all lost because they couldn't stay calm for 10 seconds. Meanwhile, people who could stay calm under pressure had power. They could think clearly, make better decisions, respond instead of react, and their lives reflected that advantage. This is about emotional control. If you can't manage your emotions, you can't manage anything else. Your temper will sabotage you faster than any external enemy ever could. Another powerful one. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Solomon saw what happened to communities without direction, without purpose, without a clear picture of where they were going. They fell apart. People became aimless. Morality declined. Everything collapsed from within. The same is true for you personally. If you don't have a vision for your life, you're just reacting to whatever happens. Drifting, surviving, but not actually building toward anything. And that directionless existence slowly kills you. You need to know where you're going, what you're building, what matters to you. Not vaguely, specifically. Because, without that vision, you'll waste years on things that don't matter. And by the time you realize it, it might be too late. Let's hit one more. A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. Solomon had both riches and reputation. And he's telling you that reputation matters more. Why? Because riches can be lost, stolen, spent. But your reputation, your character, your name, that follows you everywhere. It opens doors, it builds trust, it creates opportunities, or it closes everything off if it's bad. People focus on making money, but they neglect their reputation. They cut corners, they burn bridges. They act like short-term gains matter more than long-term respect. And Solomon is warning you that's backwards. Build a good name first. Be someone people trust. Someone people respect. Someone who keeps their word. That's worth more than any amount of money. Because money without a good name is temporary. But a good name can generate wealth for generations. Now, here's what makes Solomon's Proverbs so powerful. They're not theories. They're observations of how reality actually works. These are patterns that played out in his kingdom thousands of times, and they're still playing out today, in your life, right now. The people getting destroyed by pride, still happening. The people whose harsh words create endless conflict, still happening. The people who hang around fools and become fools themselves, still happening. The people who love pleasure and end up broke, still happening. Nothing has changed. Human nature is the same. The consequences are the same. The patterns are the same. Solomon just wrote them down in a way that's impossible to forget. So the question is, are you paying attention? Or are you making the same mistakes everyone else makes while thinking somehow you'll get different results? Because Solomon already told you how it ends. Pride leads to destruction. Bad company corrupts. Pleasure-seeking leads to poverty. Quick tempers destroy relationships. Lack of vision leads to wasted life. These aren't suggestions. They're warnings based on observable patterns. You can ignore them, but you can't avoid the consequences. The patterns don't care if you believe in them or not. They just keep playing out, over and over, generation after generation. Solomon figured this out 3,000 years ago. He had everything, saw everything, and distilled it all into short truths that still cut deep if you actually listen to them. The wisest man who ever lived gave you the cheat codes to life, the patterns that determine success and failure, the warnings that could save you years of pain. They're all right there in his Proverbs. The only question is, will you actually listen? Or will you learn the hard way like everyone else? Subscribe for more forgotten wisdom that still works.